Good afternoon, Bob. Today I'm meeting with Bob Clore, who's going to share with us some of his recollections about life here in Macomb Township on behalf of the Macomb Township Historical Commission. Welcome, Bob. Can you first of all tell us where you were born and raised?
Well, I was born in Clinton Township on Hall Road and Heinrich Road. But we lived there 1 year, and then we moved to 21 Mile and Romeo Plank. The first place west of where the bank sits now, Huntington Bank. And we moved there in 1949. And we lived in, my parents and my aunt and uncle lived next door. We lived in the garages of the homes that are there now. And we lived there for 10 years before my parents built the house. And then that was in 1958. They moved into the house, and then I lived there all my life. And then in 1973, I moved to Marcel Street off of 22 Mile, just east of Romeo Plank in Waldenburg. So.
Okay.
I've been in the area all my life, more or less. So.
And is Clore the original surname for your family, or has it been
Yes.
changed over the years?
Yes.
And just briefly, do you recall where your folks came from?
Well, my father was born and raised at Hall Road and Heinrich Road, and my mother lived in just west of Saginaw, is where she was born and raised at. And she moved down here when she was 18 years old to work at the factories in Mount Clemens and everything, and then that's when she met my father.
And what kind of occupation was your father? Was he a farmer?
No, he worked he was a tree trimmer for the Troy Edison Company. And he was with that for 40-some years, and till he retired.
And as far as schooling yourself?
I went through kindergarten through 8th grade from Emmanuel Lutheran, which was almost right across the street from our place. And then from there I went to Chippewa Valley High School, which was just opened a year before I went to high school.
Okay.
So.
And you said you had some interesting reflections about the sawmill that was on 21 Mile Road?
Yes, well, it was just across the street and down just a little bit from my parents' place. And the fellow by the name of Paul Arntz ran the sawmill, but it was under his father-in-law's name, which was Luckman. But the actual building, about half of it is still there. It sits behind a brick home that sits right on 21 Mile Road. And it's a red, it's an older building, and it sits right behind the house there. It's very hard to see unless you know, if you knew it was there from before.
And that was that that's just a portion of what it used to be like, right?
Right. About, I'd say, half or so of what it really was, and everything. And Paul worked it all the time there, all winter long. That's all they did was saw logs. So, and then he had a farm there also that he had dairy cows at and everything.
And what was life like? What were things like when you were growing up on Romeo Plank and in that area?
Well, I lived on 21, and it was all dirt road then. There was planks in the road every springtime when the frost would come out of the ground. The planks would come up out of the ground with them, and the roads would get real bad and everything. But during the wintertime, Romeo Plank was paved, and It didn't have very much traffic. It was sometimes 10 minutes in between cars.
Was it planking for roads, was that a common activity at that time in Macomb Township?
Well, that was long before my time, but my parents always told me that just through the years, the old horse and buggies and everything, when the roads used to get real bad, they used to lay planks down to drive over them, and just they built them up through the years.
And do you recall, it was Romeo Plank, was that road always named Romeo Plank, or did it?
As long as I was around, yes, it was always Romeo Plank.
Okay.
And like I say, it's always been paved as long as, but
And what about recollections about Goldie's and the Waltenberg Bar and Steyer's? Any recall or memories from your folks and what you remember?
well, years ago when my parents used to, every Friday night we would go to Mount Clemens, the grocery shop, and then on the way back we'd always stop at that time where Goldie's was called Kling's Tavern. And my parents would always stop for a drink, and each one of us kids, I had a brother and a sister, we would get one pop, and they would have a couple of shells of beer, and then we would go home, and it was Kling's Tavern. And Waldenberg Bar at that time was always called Dietrich's. It was owned by a fellow by the name of Roy Dietrich. And in years before that, my dad always told me that the bar was across the street in the building called Dopp's. There's a big sign up on the front that's called Dopp's store, you know, and that's where the bar used to be years ago. And it's not where it is now. And Steers Hardware, it's been there as long as I can ever remember, and the actual Steer family at one time lived right in the hardware store while they ran it. And, on the north end of the building, there was like a little apartment in there. So.
Is that the current building that's there, was that larger than at the time, years back, or is it pretty much the same?
Pretty much the same.
Just like it is?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
The little room on the north side of the building is where they lived in. It was like an apartment. So.
And the roads in general here in Macomb Township, aside from Romeo Plank, were they all dirt roads too? And
Romeo Plank and 23 Mile Road was paved, and Hall Road was paved, but everything else was dirt. Heinrich Road, Garfield Road, Hayes Road, Card Road, they were all just dirt and gravel roads, you know. And 24 Mile, 25 Mile Road were all gravel roads.
what did you do as a kid for relaxation in Macomb Township?
Well, during the summertime, we play with the neighbor kids and play baseball, or I worked at a lot of the local farmers, baling hay for them and that during the summertime for a couple of bucks a day and everything. There's about 3 or 4 different dairy farmers around the area. They would get their hay cut and raked up and everything, and then I would go over and help them load it all and unload it. And during the wintertime, we played outside in the snow, or we would get on our ice skates and hop on the Clinton River behind Emmanuel Lutheran School, and we would skate all the way to Mount Clemens and back. It was probably about a 5 or 6 mile trip, and we'd spend a whole afternoon just skate on the creek and back.
Would the creek be Clinton River, or would it be?
Well, it's a branch of the Clinton River. It runs parallel along Romeo Plank Road and then all the way down to Cass and Moravian Drive down there is where the bridge crosses over there. That's about as far as we would go. Because a lot of times once we got the other side of that, there would be open water, so.
And did the Clinton River play, I mean, what role did the Clinton River play as far as the development of Macomb Township? I mean, was it used for anything other than just recreation and runoff, or?
That was about all it was, just mostly runoff for the farmers, and ran through all the farm ground, you know. They would always try to drain their fields as much as they could towards it, you know, so.
And would it be a place to enjoy during the hot weather?
We'd find swimming holes every now and then, and we would jump in and have some fun.
Okay.
There wasn't too many real deep spots or anything. I didn't want anything very deep because I couldn't swim, so.
What about the organization of the township that you recall? When you first got here, your recollection of what it was like to where it's
Well, when I
progressed?
was first born, I mean, I don't remember much of it, but I remember when they started the fire department. I was very young, like 6 or 7 years old, but I remember when they started it, and a lot of the fellas, a lot of the kids I played with, their parents were the ones that actually started the fire department. And, you know, they only had a couple of trucks when they first started, but they were really dedicated to what they did, you know. It was just all the old farmers and a few other fellas that started it and built it up to where it is today, you know.
And I take it that there was a need at that time to get something going.
Yeah, because otherwise the closest thing was Mount Clemens or Selfridge Air Force Base for any fire trucks around. There was no township around that actually had anything besides Mount Clemens and that.
What about public safety? I guess I'm thinking of police department.
It was just mainly the sheriff's department.
Okay.
And you didn't see too many police officers, you know, once in a great while, but there wasn't really a need for it because there wasn't very many robberies or anything, and there wasn't, well, once I got old enough then to drive and that, then there was cars around and did a little speeding and stuff like that, but before then there wasn't really a need for it, you know.
And what did most of the kids that you were growing up with when they could drive, I mean, aside from tractors, of course, is there a particular car that you would get, or you would share, or?
Well, most generally we drove the parents' cars and everything until we got old enough to, when we graduated from high school, and usually we got our own cars, you know. And my first car was a brand new one I bought. With money that I made from the farmers throughout the years, I put money down, and man, that was a 1966 Ford that I bought. It was brand new. I paid $2,200 for it, brand new, to do it.
Is there anything that comes to mind when you could really see, and your folks could see, the township changing dramatically?
Well, when it really started changing is after when I got married in '74. That's when a lot of these new subdivisions started in, like Plum Grove and all them. That's when all the first subdivisions really came into effect around here. So.
And then things just snowballed from there,
Yes,
pretty
it
much?
just blossomed right out. My in-laws' farm was at on Romeo Plank Road, between 21 and 22 Mile Road, right across the street from Wiegand's Nursery. And they actually, their house and barns and everything sat on the east side of the road, and they actually sold the 60 acres to Ray Wiegand to start the farm that he did with the nursery. So
And that's still there, and it's still
yes,
alive and well, isn't it?
yes, it sure is. So
As far as the organization of Macomb Township, the politics, with the township supervisor, you mentioned the fire department starting. Other things that happened that made you think, wow, we're really growing fast, things are happening here?
well, it just it was just local politicians. They were mostly all farmers that ran the politics back in them days, and then well, the one gentleman that used to live across the street from where I live now was part of who this building is named after, Marv Blank, and he lived there on 22 Mile Road. He was a carpenter and got into politics, ran for treasurer, and then went from there. So, and I knew the Kosses. Russ Koss was one of the first supervisors, and Joe Koss was a fire chief for years. I went to school with Joe's oldest son, went all the way through school with him, hung around with him, and I still do visit with him all the time. So,
Okay. As far as the moving in with subdivisions, that certainly had an impact on the area, the growth of the area. Any thoughts about that for you and those that were farmers? I mean, is that good, bad, indifferent towards that development?
well, I guess when it started, everybody didn't really want to see it happen, but we knew you wasn't going to fight prosperity, But myself and my two brother-in-laws, we used to farm quite a bit of the area. We did it we worked our regular jobs and then came home at night and worked different areas in the township. We had my in-laws' place, and then Janet Dunn's in-laws. We worked their farm for quite a few years, and there was other farms in the area that we would rent from the people, and we would grow no cattle or anything. We would just grow soybeans and corn and hay and stuff like that.
Can you recall, or do you know of farms that are still in the area that have been here a long time? The names?
Well, there's one farm there, 24 in Card Road, that is still going pretty heavy, and that would be the Schramm farm. But otherwise, there isn't many farms left in Macomb Township that are actually being worked, so.
And as far as your family, anyone in your family involved with the local politics or organization of the township, any aspect of it, fire department, any part of that?
No, my father, and he, like I say, he worked for Detroit Edison, and he never got into much with politics or anything else like that. But he always helped out at the church and stuff like that, but never got into politics. He always said it was better for somebody else to run it. So
You mentioned Emmanuel Church and the school there. Was there another school or another church in the area that played a significant role in the early formation of Macomb Township?
well, St. Peter's Lutheran was a runoff of Emmanuel. Years ago, Emmanuel was there, and then there was people in the northern part of the township that belonged to Emmanuel, but it was so far for them to come with the horse and buggies and everything. They tell me that that's why they started St. Peter's, so that it would take up the people of the northern part of the township could go to the Lutheran church.
Wow.
And then
And-
like St. Isidore's, that started in the 50s. That's when that was built, so.
And St. Isidore is, of course, is Catholic, and
Right.
the other ones are Lutheran, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Bob, is there anything that you recall that was very difficult for your family when you were growing up, as far as food items, appliances, that was difficult to obtain or you didn't have?
Well, we had, TVs were just coming out when I was born, and my parents had a little 9-inch black and white TV with a little round screen on it for about the first 10 years of my life, and then they graduated to a whole 19-inch, and they was one of the very few in the neighborhood, you know, that had a bigger TV, but and then as we were kids, like I say, we always went to Mount Clemens for any grocery shopping or clothes shopping, and you only did it once every 2 weeks, you know. You didn't just go to the store whenever you wanted to. There wasn't that many stores around, so. And we grew, my parents always had a big garden. My mother canned everything, and so we didn't have to go buy vegetables or anything like that. And then my father would always go to the local farmers around the area, and he'd buy a side of beef or half a pig, or he'd buy a couple dozen chickens at one time and butcher them and put them in the freezer. So we always had a big freezer full of meat, so didn't have to go to the store to buy meat every week. So.
And lastly, Bob, is there anything else that you'd like to add to our discussion today that you'd like to share with the group?
Not really. I mean, Emmanuel was just a 2-room schoolhouse when I went there, so we only had 80 kids in the whole class, or the whole school. And it's a lot bigger building now than what it was when I went there. And then Chippewa Valley, when I started there, that was the first school I ever went to that had inside plumbing.
Oh my God.
So it was a little bit easier during the wintertime.
So I take it that in Manual, at least when you were growing up and with a 1 or 2 room schoolhouse, an outhouse was a common
Yes.
fixture.
They had 2, one for the men, or for the boys, and one for the girls. So, but we managed.
Well, thanks, Bob Clore. Thank you for your
Okay.
time and insight about your experiences here in Macomb Township on behalf of the Macomb Township Historical Commission. Thank you so much.
All right.